Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Leveraging Analytics in Higher Education to Create a Data-Driven Enterprise and Culture. My name is Liz Herrera, and I am the Director of Advanced Analytics with LPA Software Solutions. Before we get started, I want to introduce LPA to those folks on the line who are not yet familiar with who we are. LPA Software Solutions is an analytics consulting firm that has been in business since 2001. We have over 500 clients across a variety of industries, including education, of course, as well as healthcare, hospitality, insurance, finance, manufacturing, government, retail, energy, and banking. You'll see on the slide that we have three really well-known and industry-leading partners who we work with. In addition to implementing and training on our partners' technology solutions, we also provide consultative services to our clients in everything from analytics strategy, advanced and predictive analytics, business intelligence, data management and governance, as well as financial planning analytics. Our team members are tenured with an average of over 10 years experience in the field implementing analytics solutions. So with that intro, I want to move into today's content for the webinar. We're going to dig into some of the challenges faced by higher ed institutions today and how analytics can be used to get out in front of them. Specifically, we'll focus on pulling together disparate data, using reporting for both business intelligence and financial analytics, and we'll discuss the newer trends of data science and artificial intelligence. Finally, we'll wrap things up by providing some recommendations for how you can get started on your own analytics journey. Let's set some context and look at the current landscape in higher education. Higher ed institutions are experiencing the repercussions of a changing and increasingly global economy. There has been a recent trend of declining enrollment, with some reports suggesting that an accelerated decline for enrollment projections over the next decade. This has partly to do with changes in the types of learners who plan to enroll and when they plan to enroll. There is less emphasis on traditional versus non-traditional students, but rather learning on a continuum. More individuals are seeking higher education at different points in their careers or lives, and the question is if institutions are ready to serve those continual learning opportunities. Competition for enrollment is also a major factor, and not just for international students. There are a lot of options available to learners today, and differentiating your institution as well as targeting the best prospects is really an imperative. Digital transformation has been a big trend across college campuses. One of the key aspects of planning for a future state information architecture is connected data. Some of you may currently feel the pain of siloed data and systems. Anywhere you can reduce manual intervention, consolidate data, and streamline processes will gain you efficiencies that translate to business outcomes. One of the major benefits of connected data is that it can provide you greater insight into the life of the student, a more holistic view into students' experiences, and it can identify where meaningful interventions are necessary. Finally, culture. Change is really difficult, and traditionally, higher education institutions have been slower to adopt data and technology in comparison to the corporate world. But there are solutions for these challenges, and at the top of the list is analytics. So why now? I believe that higher ed institutions are finally at a point where they want to move from more of an operational view of data and cost savings up the maturity curve to more of a transformative view of data. And in addition to this readiness from a maturity standpoint, there's also a plethora of new data available to us, and folks want to be able to leverage it. So staying competitive will depend on institutions finding new ways to up their data game. We can also learn from what the private sector has done. We have seen analytics across industries used, including the ones listed here. And some of the common areas that are addressed in the corporate world could really map to higher education. For example, planning and budgeting is a universal need. Logistics could just as easily apply to, say, campus housing, What's the optimal placement for your inbound students? For customer, swap out the word student. So we could learn everything from acquiring and retaining students to growing alumni donors. Risk and fraud are always a concern too. How do you mitigate risk, whether that's planning for capital expenditures, as well as detecting suspicious events like financial aid fraud, for example? In the next section, we'll explore analytics concepts in more detail, including use cases specific to higher education. The foundation for analytics is having access to data and then making sense of it through some kind of reporting. When we talk about connected data, we mean being able to effectively utilize information from source systems across the institution. I have examples of sources on the left here, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but I would expect your source data to include admissions, advancement, if you have any kind of CRM system, enrollment services, finance, operations, and then a student information system as well. Again, not exhaustive. I'm sure you have other sources that you can think of that you'd want to pull in for analytics. The most efficient way to drive insight using analytics is to be able to tap into a consolidated single source of the truth. This may be a data warehouse or a data lake, or it could be a virtualized data set where you don't move data really around all that much. By connecting your data sources, you can give end users access to reliable, timely data, and then you can layer analytics on top of that to gain some actionable insight. And finally, you can optimize how you're using resources across the institution. So there really is a benefit here to thinking about connecting your data so that you're not working in data silos. So the first subset of analytics that we'll talk about today is business intelligence. And this technology taps into your source data and provides a user-friendly, often self-service interface to consume reports and dashboards. It helps you answer core questions like, what happened? Why did it happen? How do we perform against a target or a goal? There are many BI technology tools in the market. Some things that you probably want to consider are scalability of the BI platform, whether you want something on-premise or open to cloud solutions, and there are certainly cost implications there, so it's worth considering cloud. And also identifying stakeholder users and their skill sets. And we always recommend having a plan in place for enablement and training, regardless of the technology that you plan to implement. And certainly with business intelligence, you'd want to do that. So irrespective of which tool you select, business intelligence can support your data-driven decision-making by helping you connect your data and uncover patterns and trends in a much more efficient way than a human can do by manually scanning through data. BI also allows for side-by-side comparisons of data. So what happened last year at the same time, or can we look at outcomes by department or program? You should also be able to drill down from a high-level aggregate view of the business to very discrete granular details. And this can really support any root cause analysis that you want to do. Finally, BI can help automate complex tasks like performing calculations and scheduling regular updates to reports and dashboards. So this slide shows an example executive level dashboard, and we can see key metrics that are important at an institutional level, including application and admission rate, total enrollment, retention rate. We can also look at those rates by subgroups and also across degree programs. So it's a nice kind of snapshot, visual, high level, how is the institution doing? Other dashboards and reports could also be developed specifically around several use cases. We have 4 examples right here. Certainly student retention and completion rates are of interest. looking at student recruitment, how are we doing, targeting different areas of the country and the globe from an admissions and enrollment standpoint. Is there anything we could do for curriculum improvement? So monitoring individual student progress by professor in a specific course. That's something that could be done using business intelligence. And then on the development or advancement side, how are you tracking your alumni donors? Do you have a good handle on that? These are just a few use cases we've seen tackled in higher education. Another area that is typically a focus for institutions from a reporting standpoint is finance, and we'll look at that separately. There are a specific set of challenges faced by finance groups that can be addressed by analytics. Visibility into data is really key. Many finance teams report spreadsheet hell where everything is disconnected, data are old, it's difficult to do any kind of self-service or ad hoc analysis, and you just have this propagation of spreadsheets all over the organization. Monitoring performance is also challenging. Many finance teams express frustration that they're reactive instead of proactive and have difficulty with monitoring improvement plans. Resources, of course, are always a challenge, and in the finance space, this means spending too much time on manual efforts, lack of security in housing and disseminating information, so maybe having those spreadsheets in different folders or being emailed back and forth. Also having difficulty meeting everyone's needs. You might have folks who have different skills, who have different requirements for analyzing data, and you don't have a good way to address that. Also, the ability to measure performance against a plan is frequently a pain point that we hear from finance teams. More often than not, data are aggregate, so there's a lack of visibility into the details that can help us identify key drivers for outcomes. Financial analytics technology can address those challenges by supporting collaboration, not just in finance, but across the organization. It also promotes a reduced dependence on spreadsheets, also automation and calculations for reporting. One of the hallmarks of financial analytics is having capabilities to do forecasting, budgeting, planning, as well as scenario or what-if analysis. When you're investigating financial analytics and performance management technology, some of the key elements or capabilities you should be looking for are listed on this slide. I'm not going to dig deep into each one, but just at a high level, you want to look for something agile, that's user-friendly, preferably visual, with a variety of modeling options. You might still want the option to have an Excel or spreadsheet-like interface for folks because that's familiar, but certainly something that's scalable with options for deploying on-premise or cloud to meet your infrastructure and security needs, and something that aligns to the strategy at the institution level. We have a couple of examples of financial analytics and reporting here. The first is a dashboard that shows target versus actual for line item expenses, as well as a scorecard to show if we're on track, which is the green circles, or not, so those red squares. It's a nice little visual to show us how we're performing. We also have a representation of the distribution of spend across the organization, as well as high-level financial metrics of interest. So it's a great snapshot, again, dashboard, but from a financial standpoint, for how the business is doing. In the second example, we can see the budget over the course of the year by quarter, and then a breakdown of how specific line items are contributing to the overall budget. So again, more of a report level where if we clicked on something, we could drill into the detail to dig in. Maybe we wanted to look at quarter, or maybe you want to do this by semester or year over year, so we can look at more details for how we're performing financially. There are many other areas where financial analytics can be applied across the institution, and you'll see there's 6 core areas that I have listed here, everything from HR, workforce planning, to finance, which we already kind of talked about, but there's even more that you could do from a financial standpoint in reporting, whether that's CapEx planning, P&L, balance sheets, cash flow. Also from an operational standpoint, demand planning, inventory planning. You still have places in a higher education institution where you need to plan for inventory. On the IT front, budgeting, shared services planning, if you use any kind of ITS model, certainly shared services planning is something that you'd want to take a look at, using financial analytics for admissions, doing forecasting or projections into the future. If we're looking at capacity planning, any kind of admissions dashboards, incentives. So if you have folks who are doing recruiting for you, keeping track of how they're doing as well. And then from a marketing standpoint, how much marketing spend you are doing related to recruitment. Can we do campaign scorecards so we can understand how profitable a specific campaign was in terms of recruitment and admissions and enrollment. So lots of different use cases where you could apply some of financial analytics. Okay, so far we have looked at making data accessible and applying business intelligence and financial analytics to gain insight into how things are running at the institutional level. The next step of the analytics maturity curve is getting to business transformation. And we do this using data science and AI. Data science, machine learning, AI, these are all certainly buzzwords that are pretty prevalent out there, certainly in commercials, articles, and you probably have heard it in the news. It can be difficult to parse out what's just buzz versus what is real. So the reality is that the underpinnings for these technologies have been around over a long time. It's just that there have been advances in technology and an increase in readiness for testing out these new iterations of the methods. And that's really the differentiator here. So data science as a discipline involves a process of identifying a business problem, accessing the data aligned to the problem, doing typically a lot of data preparation, maybe some exploratory analysis, iterative data modeling using statistical algorithms, and then finally sharing results out and determining how best to deploy them to end users and applications. Machine learning is really a subset of data science. Typically, these are algorithms that are more complex. They can be supervised or unsupervised, and they're made possible by the increased computational power that's available today. And the same is true for AI, artificial intelligence. It's accessible due to the ability to process lots of data with sophisticated algorithms. And I like to think of AI as augmented intelligence because in its best iteration, it's used to support human work and decision making. So it's not robots taking things over, it's really human decision support. Data science and AI can help uncover more meaningful, actionable insights. And I really can't belabor the last point enough. There is a place for research, but from an institutional standpoint, if you plan to explore data science and AI, you should be thinking about how you will act upon the analysis results. Deployment is often an afterthought, but you really should consider it up front. And that's the best way to get the most value from your analysis efforts. There are 3 common types of technology used for data science and AI. There are open source solutions which give a lot of flexibility and control. They also require someone with expertise to use them. And sometimes they have hidden costs like scalability and deployment. There are several closed systems or point solutions specific to higher education on the market as well. And these can be great in that they have pre-built functions, and typically those companies have a knowledge of your space. However, the downsides are that you're typically limited to the pre-built functionality, and anything custom is going to cost you additional money. They also typically don't extend capability beyond specific business areas, so you might end up purchasing several point solutions that you have to manage. Finally, enterprise technology is fairly comprehensive in terms of functionality. It does tend to come with a higher price tag, but there have been some market shifts that have resulted in offerings that are typically managed or SaaS-based to reduce costs. I should also mention here that in this mix, you have APIs and microservices that are increasingly popular and are making especially AI more accessible. There are many areas where data science can be applied across the higher education institution. I have a few examples here, but again, this is not an exhaustive list. From a campus life perspective, you can apply data science to campus safety initiatives, to increasing student engagement, and to proactive outreach with targeted messaging. For core education operations, data science can help you identify promising applicants, forecast enrollment, alert you to at-risk students, and target alumni for advancement efforts. Data science can be used to detect fraud and help you improve tuition collection effectiveness. And it can also help on the back end operational side by assisting with security and network intrusion detection. And on the HR front, data science can help you combat attrition, or it can help you find employees who will best fit your skills gaps that you're experiencing. And it can be applied to better understand employee satisfaction. Certainly mining your unstructured data, maybe you do surveys. You want to understand and apply data science to that. So I have some examples here of data science and AI visualizations and output, including student retention analysis, projected donor giving amounts, and using algorithms like decision trees to understand rules associated with outcomes. I also have some examples of coding as well as visual modeling interfaces that can be used to do data mining. So this is kind of a snapshot when I talked about open source versus enterprise. You might want to use a combination of those to do your data science and AI work. And then a final example, again, using open source to analyze data for statistical relationships and then visualize results. And again, any one of these, you would plan some kind of deployment strategy so that you could share analysis results out either with folks who are going to make decisions or directly into your end applications like your SIS, so that some action can be taken based on those results. All right, so we've covered a lot of material, so I'd like to do a recap of what we've reviewed. We started by discussing the challenges currently faced by higher education institutions, and analytics can help drive change and address these challenges. Enrollment can be tackled by using analytics, both BI and financial analytics, to project enrollment numbers and do scenario analysis to test possible outcomes using different levers. Reaching out to and admitting new types of learners at the right point in time can be addressed by using data science to proactively identify prospects. Use analytics to stay competitive, diving into your data to uncover new areas for growth. Plan on consolidating data to connect the dots, better understanding the student's journey as well as operations across the institution. And finally, change doesn't happen in a vacuum. You need support from the top and a commitment to change the culture to embrace data and analytics. So, how do you get started? First, assess your data and analytics maturity. Are you ready to move up the curve and get to business transformation? Next, target a specific problem or use case to explore. Align your internal resources, including people and data, and plan to do some kind of proof of concept to test out analytics with that first use case. So analytics doesn't have to be overwhelming, and you don't have to do everything at once. It's really, a good idea to determine if you're ready for it, and then to start small. Find something that has value as a business case that you can test out, leveraging the resources that you already have. Of course, at LPA, we'd be happy to help you get started on your analytics journey. We can provide support in a variety of ways, including assisting you develop a strategy and roadmap for analytics, helping to identify that first use case to test, implementing analytics solutions, and also enabling or training your team on analytics technology. Please do not hesitate to reach out to discuss how we can help you. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat window or email the address posted on the screen, and we will follow up with you. With that, I would like to thank you for your time and for tuning in today. All right, let's take a couple of questions. All right, first question. Do I need to wait and build a data warehouse before I look at analytics? Okay, thanks. This is a very good question. This has been a challenge for many organizations that I've worked with. The short answer is no. You don't need to build a data warehouse first. Data warehouses often take years to complete, and depending on where your source data lives, it might not even make sense to go the data warehouse route. There are several alternatives, including content area data marts with subsets of specific data that would be necessary for reporting, or data lakes, where you make a variety of data available in one location, often a big data repository. Data virtualization is a newer trend that you could explore. This involves reaching back to source systems and retrieving data in a single view without worrying about how it's formatted or where it's located. It's really important to take a look at your current infrastructure and determine which is the best approach for your specific situation. It's certainly something I would suggest spending some time on. So thank you, good question. All right, let's take another one. Where have you seen financial analytics used in higher education? So I like to think of finance as the great equalizer from an analytics perspective. Every organization we've worked with has a finance group, and education is no exception. There may be, different restrictions and considerations that you have typically, but some of the same problems can be found in education as well as other industries. But specifically in higher ed, I can give a couple of examples where we've used financial analytics to address business problems. So first example, we worked with a private liberal arts university in New York who needed assistance with building out an alumni donor system. And we helped them to build the data source to track alumni and campaigns. And we also implemented a planning and budgeting solution to track revenue and expense related to the fundraising campaigns. So this was a combo data reporting financial analytics effort. Another example with a public university that really didn't have financial data reporting and was doing a lot manually to create financial statements. So we worked with them to build out workflows and automation using multiple source data systems, and the resulting consolidated data they could use then to do financial reporting. So again, good question. Thank you. All right, let's see. Another question. Are there any new trends in business intelligence? So BI has been around in one form or another for a long time. And many of you probably have some systems that do some level of reporting if you're not already using a business intelligence tool. There are some areas in BI that we're seeing gain traction out in industry. One is incorporating data science and AI directly into a BI tool. And this takes many forms, but it can be, everything from exposing statistical algorithms for a power user or having data science visualizations as output from open source tools. I'm also seeing the incorporation of natural language processing in BI tools. So chatbots or virtual assistants that can answer a question or present an analysis based on you entering either a natural language question, what's the relationship between X and Y, or specifically entering data elements of interest. So, what is the relationship between these two things, or, what is our forecasted enrollment for the next 5 years, something like that. The third trend I'm seeing is the incorporation of third-party data into BI tools, location-based data, market data, social media data, weather, news. Several platforms have direct feeds or APIs into data services that can be used for analysis or just displayed on a dashboard or report. Good question, though. There have been advances in what BI has to offer compared to just a few years ago. All right, I'll take one more question. We don't have any data scientists on staff. Does this mean we can't do data science and AI? I hear this a lot with clients who worry that they don't have data scientists or statisticians in-house. You might be in an especially interesting position because I would guess that you have faculty members who are using these methods in their own research that they're doing. But from an institutional staffing standpoint, you don't need to have hired a team of data scientists to get started with data science and AI. What is critical is to have folks in-house who understand your business and your data. You'll want to consider what their skills are from a technology standpoint, and then make sure you're selecting a tool that aligns with those skill sets. And I mentioned before, there's a variety, right? There's open source, there's enterprise, some are visual, some are code-based. So really understand who your team is, who your anticipated users are, and then choose a technology that aligns with that. Also, make sure you plan on training for whatever tool that you choose. That'll give your team the highest likelihood of success. You may also decide that you need to bring in new skills, but I would certainly start by looking at who you already have internally. Okay, for anyone whose question I didn't get to, we will follow up directly with you. If you have any questions later, please reach out or visit lpa.com and we will be in touch. Thank you again for joining us and have a great day.